Welcome to Coffee and Coaching with Caryn. Grab your favorite mug, sit back, and enjoy. Now here's your host, Caryn Fitzgerald.
This is Caryn Fitzgerald, your host for Coffee and Coaching with Caryn. And my next guest in 2011 tried to end her life. Major depression. It's a tough topic, and we are going to talk about it, and we're going to find some ways to help others. So major depression had convinced her there was nothing left worth living for. She was in excruciating emotional pain. And Nancy Virden was challenged immediately to rise above the status of victim. And it was agonizing. It was depression, hopelessness. They're not motivators. And we're going to talk about the process of recovering and healing. So since the day of her suicide attempt, Nancy has had 3 books published, the first of which covers the day of the attempt to 1 year later, and that is Called to Live, A Chronicle of Recovery After Attempted Suicide. And it's a revealing look into the mind of a mentally ill person as she travels through major change. And it's written in real time, not hindsight. So I want to welcome my guest, and I just want to give a little disclaimer for both you and I. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Nancy's not a doctor or a therapist. She is sharing her story and lessons learned from the major depressive episode she was living through and the suicide attempt. So this is not medical, professional mental health care or treatment. We are going to provide some resources on our website where if you do know somebody that is struggling or you yourself are struggling, please, please, please contact one of these resources immediately. Personally, I can tell you 4 years ago, a dear friend of mine ended her life, and it was a horrible experience for all involved. And I will tell you that those left behind are not better off. I deal with that on a daily basis. So there is help. Nancy is living proof that there is a way out of the darkness, and we're going to make sure that these resources are put up there while Nancy is sharing with us, so that, again, Nancy's not a doctor, but she is sharing ways that you can help others, and the important thing is taking action. So, Nancy, tell us about your first book, Called to Live.
Well, it was interesting because I was in no mood whatsoever to make my life work, and yet I felt compelled to write. What happened is that in the year of 2010, there was a huge move across state. I moved 8 hours away from my home and my grown sons, and I landed in an area where I knew nobody. I was unfamiliar with the area. And I had gone from someone who worked and, in fact, had just graduated a few weeks earlier from school to nothing. I woke up one morning and there was nothing. There was nothing to do. There was no one I knew. And for someone with a history of major depression, or any mental illness actually, that is a big red flag. And it was time at that moment for me to go and look for help in the area in which I now lived, but I didn't do it. Instead, I clung to my isolation. I stayed to myself and tried to ride it out. As my mood grew worse and worse, eventually I reached out, but it was honestly a little too little, a little too late. By the time I reached out, I'd almost decided that everything was helpless, and in January of 2011 I tried to end my life. I didn't get the idea that living was a good idea, and for 16 more months. 16.
Wow.
And in the month of January I attempted twice, and then later in the year. And it was such, when we talk about darkness, there's almost not a word for this. I describe it in my book as a shroud that was just coming down from out the top of my head down over my shoulders. The weight was enormous. When you're severely depressed, you feel as if you can't move, you have no energy, there's no motivation to care about having any energy, and it's so difficult to look for help, to care about getting help, to reach out and let people around you know what you need, to even care that you need anything. So depression saps you from not only life and functioning in life, but it also, in many ways, prevents, or I should say, slows down the ability to grow from it. And if it had not been for help, I would not have made that step forward. So the first thing that happened in the hospital was a psychiatrist handed me a journal, and she said, write. And I thought, okay, might as well. I've got nothing else to do in here. And for some reason, it just took off from there. And I think part of it is that I had been silent for so many years. I mean, I'm 53. So when this happened, I was 49 years old, and I had spent 49 years not talking to anybody much about what I felt and what I was going through. Any pains that I had were pretty much secret. So I think what happened is I got that paper and pen, and it was just an outpouring. And I wrote down what was happening as the recovery took place, and that's what Called to Live is.
Wow. Now, you say at 49 years old is when this all came to a head.
Yeah.
Most of the different things that I've learned over the years, and there's so many different schools of thought. You know, I've dealt with depression, not major to the point that you're talking about, but there have been times where I've been depressed or in a funk, and what I found for me was I wasn't really living my true, authentic self. I wasn't doing things that I enjoyed. I was technically, I guess you could say I was living other people's agendas. And there's a lot of school of thought that says that part of depression comes from, and yes, there's like a chemical side to it and all that. I'm not discounting any of that.
Right.
But if you're talking 49 years of keeping things to yourself and maybe not being an authentic to what you're really drawn to be doing and creating and your true self, I can't imagine the emotional impact that at 49 years, were there years before, were there signs, were there things that you were experiencing where you're like, wow, you know what, maybe I can reach out and get some help? Or was it, the 49th year was pretty much the end all be all?
Oh, it repeated itself throughout my life, not necessarily attempting suicide. That was the only time, but that was the only year, I should say. But there was a lot of evidence that major depression was a part of my life, and that there was a lot of sadness and there was a lot of pain, but I didn't know it. I was so wrapped up in not feeling that I couldn't have told you, probably, except for on occasion I could have told you, and if I had told you that I was in pain, I wouldn't have necessarily been able to tell you why. I grew up in a home that was hostile and violent, and I married when I was 20. I went straight from home to marriage, and the marriage was unhappy. And I had these experiences of being very sad, but let me put this into a little perspective here.
Okay.
I remember when there were tragedies on TV, okay, and there'd be terrible news, some terrible thing happened somewhere, and counselors are being sent to those people to help them with their grief process or whatever. I would watch those news spots, and my reaction was surprise. How dare they send counselors to those people? How dare they say that out loud on TV? How dare it be okay for those people to need counselors? Why can't they just move on? I was so removed from the world of emotions that I simply did not get the fact that people needed help, let alone that I needed help. And it was just not on my agenda to reach out and get help. There were several reasons for that, I suppose. It's almost like there can be a lot of reasons and no explanation. It was kind of like that, I can point to several things that may have held me back from experiencing the world of emotions, but ultimately it was my decision to not reach out and tell anybody what was going on, regardless of the reasons for it.
Were there when this all happened, though, did any of your friends look back, or the people around you, did they look and turn around and say, you know what, Nancy, I think I knew. I mean, I mean, I was anorexic and bulimic for years, and when I finally requested help, people around me went, I knew something was off, but I just wasn't sure what to say or how to say it. And so did you find that people around you knew something was wrong, but weren't quite sure what to do or say?
No, it's quite the opposite for me. I believe I experienced a major depressive episode just before I got married, about the age of 19 or so. And then there was another one when I was 27. And those two took place in two different cities, different sets of friends. The only that I can remember off the top of my head, the only constant through that would have been my husband and myself. So people didn't necessarily know that that was part of what I experienced, and I also didn't understand. At the age of 27, I didn't know I had had a major depressive episode when I was 19, or that I was having one when I was 27, even though I was having suicidal thoughts. I finally went to a therapist who started to explain to me, but I didn't get medication, and I went without treatment following that for another 17 years. And I had ups and downs with my moods, but there's no way to explain my lack of reaching out for support except to say that I just didn't. And so when it came around to 2005, and in 2005, I really was hospitalized for the first time. I reached out for help. I realized that I was in some serious trouble, and I had come to the point where it was like, I can't live any longer unless I get help. That was the difference. In 2005 was, I can't make it unless I get help, and in 2011 it was, I can't make it, regardless of whether help comes my way or not. And that was the difference. So in 2005 it was more of a very, very serious depression, and I was hospitalized, and I started to receive medication for the first time, which was tremendous help. But I never got to the point where I was actually learning to share my emotions, to recognize my emotions, to deal with them, or to recognize the realities of my life. I was still in a cloud of misinformation, misunderstanding, and in many ways unwillingness to reach past all of that and learn how to do it differently.
Wow. Well, I'd love for you, and again, ladies and gentlemen, Nancy's not a doctor or a therapist, so everything we're sharing today is from her own personal life experience, and we have posted resources on our event page provided by Nancy. Thank you so much, about suicide and several different, for depression, bipolar, a lot of different resources. So if anything you hear today is resonating with either you personally or because of someone around you, a loved one, please, please, please make sure and get them help. So, Nancy, a quick question before we go to break.
Yeah.
What symptoms, I know you talked about several of the things that you've experienced, what symptoms have you discovered are commonalities that people who are dealing with major depression, from your own personal experience and then others that you may have talked with, what are some of the symptoms or some of the things that, the red flags that people need to realize while something's going on, we need to either get help or get help for them?
Yes. Well, from what I've been taught, when there's sadness or anxiety that lasts for at least 2 weeks and it's disrupting your functioning, then it's time to start asking for help. We have the commonality, of course, with depression is a hopelessness, a pessimism, negativity. But there's also things like isolating and, I'm not going to take that phone call, or I'm not going to return that phone call, or I was supposed to go to that party tonight, I'm just going to not go. I don't want to go to work today, I'm going to sleep in, I'm going to call in sick. Those kinds of things where you just don't want to be around people and your energy is going away. I've heard of people who have it so badly, and I was very, very close to this, where they can't even get out of bed, and getting out of bed one day and brushing their teeth is an enormous effort. And I understand that depression is something that brings about that fatigue, and there's a difficulty in concentrating. And there are other symptoms like eating disorder, I won't say eating disorders, excuse me, overeating or undereating. It's a shift in how you would normally be. If you see yourself as not who you used to be and not who you want to be, and you're just not able to function very well, then you need to reach out, and you need to find out why. And certainly, most certainly, Caryn, if there are suicidal thoughts, don't play with them. Go immediately and find somebody who can help you with that. And I recommend the emergency room, and I recommend the National Suicide Hotline, both of which are good ideas.
Those are absolutely. Yes. And the key thing is, if you are experiencing any type of suicidal thought, the key thing when you walk into the emergency room or when you're calling the suicide hotline is to say that and say, look, I'm experiencing suicidal thoughts. I'm thinking about harming myself or killing myself. And because that triggers a whole different response than I'm just feeling a little down or depressed. And a little down or depressed if you're feeling suicidal or thinking about hurting yourself is not going to get you the response in terms of the help that is really required, because there is a way out. And we are talking with Nancy Virden this morning. We're going to take a quick break here on Coffee and Coaching with Caryn, and we'll be back. So hang tight, go refill your coffee cup, and we'll be back after these messages.
Stay tuned. Coffee and Coaching with Caryn will be back after these messages.
Need a little more happiness in your life? Here you go. The Happiness Recipe Podcast to the rescue. Listen each week as June Klein and Sandy Weaver Carmen share wit, wisdom, and wonderful food with their guests. Guaranteed to add happiness to your life. happinessrecipe.net.
Yo, attention authors, share your work on Coffee and Book Chat. Book reviews, author interviews, blog posts all about you and your book. Visit coffeeandcoachingradio.com for details today.
Are you looking for quality entertainment and activities for the entire family? Then come on down to the Plaza Theater Company and Plaza Academy Dance Studio, located in Cleburne, Texas. The Plaza Theater Company is an award-winning community theater that presents 10 productions a year, performing every single weekend. If you have a child that enjoys acting, dancing, or singing, then you can enroll them in the Plaza Academy Dance Studio. For more information, visit plaza-theater.com or call 817-202-0600.
Welcome to Coffee and Coaching with Caryn. Grab your favorite mug, sit back, and enjoy. Now here's your host, Caryn Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon. We are on Coffee and Coaching with Caryn. I'm your host, Caryn Fitzgerald, and we are talking today. This afternoon's topic is a little tougher, a little darker, but you know what? There's a bright side to it, which is why we're talking about it. My guest is author Nancy Virden, and Nancy is the author of several books. The one we're talking about at the moment, though, is her book Called to Live, a chronicle of recovery after attempted suicide. And this is Nancy's personal story. So everything you're hearing today is from Nancy's personal experience. She's not a doctor or therapist. We have posted links to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline and other resources regarding depression and suicide ideation on our website and on our Facebook page. So if anything you hear is resonating with you or makes you think of someone else that you love and care about, please make sure and get them to the nearest emergency room or medical practitioner regarding this. Again, we're not giving medical advice today. So, Nancy, are you here with me?
Hello.
Wonderful.
Yes, I would like to just really encourage your listeners to find out more about depression and suicide, and those resources are excellent for giving you the straight-up facts and letting you understand exactly what it is you're looking at or dealing with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we were talking about some signs and symptoms, things that either you had experienced or others around you had experienced related to depression and suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. I would love to hear just from your own personal thoughts on antidepressants and any kind of the medications, because I know there's a lot of people who are very anti-medication because they think there's other reasons for depression or anxiety. And so I would love to hear, somebody who's been in that dark place, what are some of your thoughts on the medical interventions available in the form of medications?
There's a misconception, I believe, out there that antidepressants somehow make you happy. And that could not be further from the truth. They do not make you happy. Neither do they make your decisions for you about what you're going to think about, how you're going to focus your life. They do not give you wisdom. What they do is they correct a physical issue in your brain that prevents you from experiencing or practicing the wisdom and the positive decisions that you want to make. So when you take your medications, they help to make you reasonable, and then you can move forward from what it is that you have practiced that has helped to bring about depression.
So that would be the same as
yes.
if somebody was diagnosed with like a pre-diabetic condition or a diabetic condition, and they were offered a medication that would help their body process the sugar and the insulin and get the pancreas to work correctly. And I'm not a doctor, but I just know that those are different things related to diabetes. So it's very similar in that with diabetes, the body's not functioning in terms of processing the sugar and the insulin. So with an antidepressant, the body is not processing, the chemical process isn't working the way it should. So it sounds like the antidepressants allow for that process to happen in a form so people can function.
Exactly.
That's simple.
Taking diabetic medication, for instance, will not keep you from eating a candy bar. It won't cure you from your behavior and how you decide to live your life. What it will is offer you a tool to correct your sugar levels. The same thing with antidepressants. It's a tool. It's something that helps you physically to function in a manner that you can then choose to function with your choices and your thoughts in a healthier way.
It absolutely makes so much more sense. So I would love to hear when you were at this dark point. Okay, and you know, listeners, if you've got kids in the room, you may or may not want them listening at this point. But when you were at this dark point and you were thinking, you know, there's only one way out. How does somebody get to that point of being able to cross over that survival instinct? I mean, we all are born with this survival instinct. And how do you get to that point where you're thinking, you know, I don't want to survive anymore. I'm going to go out this way. And how does that even, I mean, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's interesting, Caryn, because as you asked the question, I'm kind of amazed that I was at that place. It sounds so irrational and so strange now. But at the time, it made all the sense in the world, and it continued to make sense, as I said earlier, for over a year and a half. All I can describe it is that the pain of living was greater than any joy in living, but it was also, there's this concept, I guess, that comes with suicidal thinking, that when you get to that point, not having life is more attractive than having life. We don't normally get to that point when we're sad. We usually just want to feel better. But when you get to the point where you just cannot see past your pain and the only way out is to die, when you get to that point, you're not thinking about, I can hang around and feel better, I can get help and feel better, I can just ride this out and feel better. You're seeing it as the end all. There is nothing else but pain in your future. There is no hope. What I feel right now, that's my life, and I would rather not feel it, and there's only one way out. That's all I can do to describe it. It's not something that hopefully most people feel. Unfortunately, suicide is not rare, and there are a lot of people who feel that, and a lot of people who unfortunately follow through. And a lot of people manage to complete their suicides, and that is just very, very tragic. Because there is hope. At that moment, we're thinking there's nothing but pain. Now, I could look forward at that time And I could have told you, okay, yeah, I could probably experience love in the future. Okay, yeah, I could probably accomplish this or that with my life. Yeah, God could probably use me here and there, but it didn't add up to enough. The pain was so great that nothing that could come in my future that was positive would be enough. All I could see were losses and more losses to come, and anything that might be positive in the future would be brief, temporary, or not happen at all. And that's what depression was telling my mind. I had no hope, zero. So when you get to that point where you can cross the line, you literally can't see over it. There's nothing ahead of you except despair. And at that point, that's where supports can step in. The person who is extremely suicidal at that point, at that level, is probably not going to have the ability to save themselves. Prior to that point, we always have a choice. But when you're on that line and you've really decided that suicide is your way out, this is a really important place for supports to step up. If you hear someone saying, I don't think I want to live anymore, I'm thinking about death, I think I'm suicidal, it's not the time to be quiet. It's not the time to shut the door and go, yeah, you talk about like that all the time. Or get out of it, snap out of it, grow up. That's not the time. The time, what you do at that time is you say, you know what, I'm going to get you help. And regardless of I'm talking to supports now, regardless of your feelings about this, maybe you're angry, maybe you're hurt, maybe you just think the whole thing's stupid. But it is up to you then to call the police, to call the ambulance, or to take that person to the hospital. Do whatever it is you have to do to make sure they are alive. Because if they've come to that place where they can't decide for themselves that there's any hope in the future, they're not going to be able to save their own lives. Not at that point.
I remember my parents, when we were younger, my parents had, I'm not even sure why they had this conversation, but I remember them telling me and my brother that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Correct.
And that has stuck with me all of these years. And I remember when my girlfriend passed away, she took her own life in October of 2010. And it was a total surprise to all of us. We knew something was wrong. We were reaching out, but the challenge was I was in Texas, other friends were on the East Coast, she was on the West Coast, and it spun out of control very quickly. And I remember afterwards when I got the phone call, and it was a combination of I was sick to my stomach, it was disbelief, and I was pissed.
Yes.
Because the reason that she took her life was not a terminal illness or anything related to that. It was something fixable had she allowed other people to help her. And she was just embarrassed as to what the problem was, and that's the only thing we can go on. But it's such I don't know, it's almost surreal. There are days when I even pick up the phone still to call her, and it's almost surreal. So I don't think at times that somebody who is in that dark place, who is got the suicidal thoughts going through their mind and they're so depressed, I don't think, and Nancy, maybe you can shed some light on this, I don't think that somebody in that place has the capacity at that moment to realize the impact of their actions on others.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I have two wonderful sons who, love me. They loved me then. And I have friends. I have other family. My mindset was they genuinely don't care. I couldn't see the love. It was not something that my brain could process at the time. And you could say, well, you could choose to see it. Well, not at that point I couldn't. Earlier I could have. And I have to say, Caryn, that what saved my life is that even though I reached out for help a little too little, a little too late, at least I'd reached out for it, and that's why I'm alive. I didn't stay at home in my apartment. I did look for somebody to help me about a month before the suicide attempt. And because I was under the auspices of somebody professional, they were on top of the game. I wasn't, but they were. And they saw what was happening, and that's why I'm here. So I would say to anybody, especially if you have a history of depression, make sure you've got a professional with you, somebody you can talk to, somebody you can hold yourself not accountable to, but in a way, yes, accountable to, but that you can keep apprised of how it is that you're feeling. I thank God that the depression I feel tends to come and go, and medications keep me steady, as well as my learning how to live life better.
There is a big difference between dealing with depression, even with a major depressive episode, and having the suicidal ideation. There is still that fine line that not all people who are depressed want to end their lives, and
No.
So there are different things. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk some more with Nancy Virden about what she's doing to share this message. So we're going to be back with Coffee and Coaching with Caryn after these brief messages.
Stay tuned. Coffee and Coaching with Caryn will be back after these messages.
Hey Lily, do you have lines, wrinkles, or low energy?
Yeah, I do.
Well, change it all now. Look and feel younger from the comfort of your own home today.
How?
Visit 10yearsyoungernow.com for your free personal consultation.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Looking to monetize your passions? Ready to get paid for doing what you love? Contact Caryn at coffeeandcoachingradio@gmail.com and get creative strategies for developing income while doing what you love.
Dreaming of turning your book into an audiobook? Make it happen. More and more people are discovering the joy of audiobooks. They should be discovering you. Our professional personal service gives you just the audio product you've dreamed of. Check us out, voiceworkondemand.com.
Welcome to Coffee and Coaching with Caryn. Grab your favorite mug, sit back, and enjoy. Now here's your host, Caryn Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon. This is Caryn Fitzgerald, your host at Coffee and Coaching with Caryn. And this afternoon we are talking with Nancy Virden. And Nancy is talking about her experience, her personal life experience with major depression and suicide attempts. We just want to make sure everyone understands that what we're talking about is from Nancy's personal experience. She's not a doctor or therapist. She's just sharing from the goodness of her heart, because she has a very powerful message that we are looking to expand and make sure everyone hears. So if you or someone you love is dealing with major depression or thoughts of suicide or self-harm, please, please, please make sure that they call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline or go to the nearest emergency room and get them help. We're not here to provide medical guidance or care. We are here to point you in the right direction. So please, the nearest emergency room or the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. So Nancy, let's pick up where we left off. And we were talking about how it's just a powerful, depression is just really powerful, and there's a difference between depression, being in a funk, being depressed, major depression, and then thoughts of suicide or self-harm, and then taking action. Those are some very specific and different things. How can a loved one who, I guess my question is, if I or someone else knew somebody who was going through a rough time, how do you know, from an outside perspective, how do you know if somebody needs help or they're just in a funk? Or, because we all have our bad days where we're just kind of like, eh. Right. I know you talked about some of the different things where, not wanting to get out of bed and change in eating habits and things like that. But, for the lay person, how do we know if we've really got something we should be taking action on?
I think my answer to that is that we don't know, and that's why we shouldn't try to diagnose anyone. The first thing that we need to do when we have concerns is to find out if we can get that person some professional help. We cannot diagnose what level, we should say, of depression a person is at any more than we could diagnose a heart attack just by looking at somebody on the outside. Most of us are not trained to know the difference. So the person that your friend or loved one needs to see is a psychiatrist. Those are the specialists in understanding what kind of medical care this person may need. Or, excuse me, a mental health professional is one also who can diagnose. And that's where it has to start. We can't possibly understand from the outside what it is this person is going through. We can look for symptoms, and especially if we hear someone saying, "I'm not sure if life is worth it anymore," or "I'm going to pull my gun out of the closet and blow my head off." When we hear that stuff, let's not take it lightly.
So it's better to take action and apologize for overreacting later than the opposite?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been that person who has had to ask somebody to go to the hospital, and they were angry at me for 8 months. But guess what? They were alive to be angry at me, and they were alive to be able to snap out of that eventually and come around and be in my life again. That would not have been the answer, possibly, if I had not interfered. What if they had survived and I had not interfered? That's a possibility. There's no way of knowing prior to the moment. So it's much better to have someone angry at you than to have them dead. That's the bottom line.
So tell us what you're doing to promote hope to the general public, because I know you've got a lot going on, and so share a bit about how people can well, first of all, what you're doing and how people can find out more.
Well, one of the things that I'm doing is that I'm trying to offer my hope to people who don't have any. I know that when I had none, I hung rather weakly, but I did hang on to the hope of other people. I had people looking at me saying, "We believe you should be here. We believe you should deserve to live. We believe there's hope for you." And I just kind of thought, well, maybe they know something I don't know. And for a little while that carried me. And I'm trying to let people understand, I know that you deserve to live. I know that there's hope for you. And if you don't see it for yourself, hang on to that for a little while. Go get yourself some hope by getting yourself some help. And it's going to come. It's going to come, and your life will be different. Now, how I'm doing that is hopefully through my website. I have a blog that I update twice a week. I have my 3 books, and I have opportunities, thank God, to go out and talk to people in public, and also one-on-one. I will come to any size group and share my story. Tell
us a little bit more. I know you have a couple other books. Tell us a little bit more about those books.
Okay. Always the Fight, a living testimony of what only God can do, is going to be out in its 2nd edition in a couple of months. I'm finishing up the changes that I wanted to make to the 1st edition, and that's going to be out soon. The 3rd one is called They Were Real, short story gateways into the thoughts of Bible characters. Now, I took stories that are very famous, such as Joseph or Moses, those kinds of stories, and I took one moment out of those people's lives and added emotions and thoughts that they may have had, according to human nature and to experiences that I've had and that other people I know have had. So it's fictionalized. It's not exactly the Bible account, but it is a moment of what happened, something major that happened in their lives and how they may have been feeling. Caryn, there's no way I could have written that book prior to getting the help that I received and learning about the world of emotions and learning to feel. So it's very exciting for me to even be able to write something like that.
It's an amazing, amazing thing when we realize, and I hope you're realizing this, Nancy. I'm sure you have by now, but I want to make sure that you hear it from me. I don't know if my voice makes a difference, but I'm going to share it. What you have gone through is not for nothing. The fact that you're here today sharing this message, and from a first-hand perspective, which, although unfortunate at the time, is so much more powerful, because I remember when my father passed away, and I had a really, really horrible response and all of that. I remember saying to one of my girlfriends, she was trying to comfort me, and I looked at her and I said, what the heck do you know? And I was pissed and, upset, and she looked at me and she said, well, when my dad passed away. And I went, oh, of course. So I really hope you understand, the magnitude of what you're sharing and the reason that you're here, and that you were not, thank goodness, successful, and that you're here to share not only your personal story, but the story of what it's like to deal with major depression and to deal with suicide and the thoughts of suicide, and even make an attempt from a person who's been there, done that, moved forward, and is living in such a different place. I mean, that's an incredible, incredible story, and it's just amazing. I'm so, so grateful that you're here sharing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much. How often do we turn around to the person next to us and say, I'm glad you're alive?
Exactly.
We don't do that, and I'm very appreciative that I get to hear that now. But, hey, let's tell everybody in our lives, I'm so glad you're here.
That is so
I had medical and therapeutic help, and I still do. But bottom line, it's God who got me through this. And it is okay to tell people that there is a higher power, that He loves you, that there is a hope. And when we look for Him, He will be found. And that is the anchor right there.
Absolutely.
For living and recovery.
Absolutely. Nancy, before we sign off today, is there anything, first of all, how can our listeners find you? I want them to hear it from you. How do they connect with you?
Sure. It's just nancyvirden.com. It's VIRDEN, Virden. And nancyvirden.com has everything you'd ever possibly want to know.
Thank you to Nancy Virden for joining me today. Ladies and gentlemen, just, you know what? This is your life. You get to live it the way you want to choose to do it. And you can make a difference in a day by just choosing differently. Thank you for listening to Coffee and Coaching with Caryn.
You've been listening to Coffee and Coaching with Caryn.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tune in next time for more Coffee and Coaching with Caryn.
Until then, visit us at coffeeandcoachingradio.com.
Caryn Fitzgerald is an author, speaker, business strategist, and leadership coach. Connect with her at coffeeandcoachingradio.com.